Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to create, alter, and destroy variables in Stata. So I'm going to start by bringing in a data set which is built into every copy of Stata. This is census.dta. You can see it's labeled as 1980 census data by state. If I just do D for describe, I will get the variable names and the variable labels. So you can see it states blah, blah, blah. I can go into browse to look and see what this data looks like. You can see each observation is a state, and I got their population, population in urban areas, median age, number of deaths, marriages, and divorces. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do is show you how to create a new variable. So I am going to generate a new variable, and the command for that is generate, which I usually shorten to gen. I'm going to call this new variable divrate, and it's going to be equal to the number of divorces divided by the number of marriages. Of course, I could just click this, or I can even shorten the name of a variable. I'll just do it as divorce divided by mar, and Stata will know I mean marriages. So now when I go back in the browse window, I should see a new variable appear over here on the far right. You can see here it is, and I can look through. Generally, when you make a new variable, you want to just take a peek at it and make sure it looks like about what you would expect it to look like. So it looks like the number of divorces is about half as big as the number of marriages in most of these states. I can look for outliers. So for example, this state, it's only an eighth as many as divorces as marriages. So I can see if I can figure out what's going on here. And if I scroll over here, I see it's Nevada. So probably it's just an inflated number of marriages because of Las Vegas. Okay, so that's generating a new variable. Of course, you can generate a new variable in more than one step. So if I go here and I see the variable region over here, takes different values. It takes like 2 is north central. If I scroll over this, west is 4. South is 3. So if I wanted to create a variable which was a dummy variable for an observation being located in the south, I can do that through, for example, a two-step process. I can generate a variable south, which is going to be equal to just the number 0. And then I'm going to replace south equal to 1 with an if statement. I'm going to replace south equal to 1 if that variable was called region is equal to 3. And when you're doing an if statement, so the command replace here, it's going to make it so that every observation of south will be changed to have the value 1 if the value of region for that observation is exactly equal to 3. So the double equal sign you have to include if you want to have an equality in an if statement. If I were doing an inequality, if I were doing something like that, I wouldn't need more than one symbol, but for an exact equality, I need 2. So now I replace south equal to 1 if region is equal to 3. So you can see 16 observations were changed. So it had better be the case that 16 of my observations were in the south. I can scroll over here and see my new observation. So Mississippi here is in the south. I can see row number 33 was North Carolina. That's in the south, and none of these observations in between were in the south. So if we scroll over here and see this new variable, lo and behold, Mississippi is equal to 1. The 33rd row, which was North Carolina, south is equal to 1, and all these intervening values are equal to 0. So now we've checked, and we can see that this new variable takes the values which we thought it should take, so we probably didn't make a mistake in our syntax. Okay, of course, you could continue messing up the variable all you want. We could say that we'll replace south equal to -10 if the region is not equal to 3. So to do a not in an if statement, not equal, I use an exclamation mark before the equal sign. So now I'm going to make everything which is not in the south is going to take the value -10 for this variable. I'll go back over to the browse window, and you can see all these intervening observations between North Carolina and Mississippi now take the value -10. Like I say, I could do it where I have an inequality. I'm going to say I'm going to replace south equal to 20 if region was greater than 3. So now I make 13 changes. And so some of these have now changed to have the value of 20. Okay, this variable is completely nonsensical now. If I wanted to leave a note to either my future self or to somebody else who would be using this data set about how I define this variable, I might consider labeling the variable. Of course, there are lots of things you can do with labels, so I encourage you to check out the help file for label by doing help label. And you can see that you can label your whole data set. You can label individual variables. You can define a value label. This is what you have to do to get like these, the defining a value label and then assigning it to a variable is what you have to do to get those variables to have blue writing in your browse window, which shows you what the value of the variable is, even though it's a number. Or it shows you what the value of the variable is in writing, even though the underlying variable is a number. So I'm just going to label this variable self to be nonsensical. So I'm going to say label variable. I'm going to name what the variable is, and then I'm going to give it a label. So I'm going to say label variable self, and then I'm going to type in pay no attention. Okay. And so now when I go to describe, you'll see that this variable has this label, pay no attention. Of course, div rate, which I created, doesn't have any label because I haven't told Stata what this variable is. Okay, so that's creating new variables. A last way that you can, a couple of last ways that you can alter a variable. One thing is I could rename this variable self. I could rename it as nonsense. And so now when I do a description, this variable's name has changed from self to nonsense, and you can see it over here in the variable window too. Okay, then another way that you can alter variables is with the command edit. So edit pulls up a window which is just like the browse window. And so what this is going to do is this is going to change our browse window into an edit window. Stata prompts me whether I actually want to do this or not, for the reason that when I'm in edit mode, I can actually change the value of cells, and you wouldn't want to accidentally change the value of something. So I'm going to change the state abbreviation from AL to Alabama, and then it'll actually show up as different in my data set. Like I say, most people don't actually like to edit their data sets in this way, because you have to do it observation by observation, and so most people prefer using the browse window where there's no chance of screwing up. Okay, I could just change this back to, if I really wanted, I'll change it back to AL. And when you go back over here, when I've done these edits in the edit window, you'll notice that in the results window, Stata left a transcript of what I did. So it said I replaced the variable state2 equal to this string of letters, Alabama, all capital letters. And then in statements are like if statements. They restrict this command to a certain set of observations. In particular, this means that I did this only in observation number 1. So if I go into my browse window, observation number 1 was Alabama. Okay. So if I wanted to redo this command here, I could just copy that out of my old commands that I've run, replace state2 equals Alabama in 1, and I'll go back here and it's done the exact same thing. So you can see it's just a transcript of what I did in edit mode. So that's creating and altering variables. The last thing which you might want to do is to get rid of variables. So for example, I might not want this variable nonsense anymore, so I can drop it. And that removes it from my data set. So of course I could drop a list of variables. I could drop div rate and divorce both at the same time, and that gets rid of both of these variables. If I wanted to drop a whole bunch of variables, let's say you had a really huge data set where you had like 150 variables and you only wanted a few, then instead of specifying which variables you want to get rid of, you can specify which ones you want to keep. So I can just click through here, I'll keep these variables, and then all the other ones are going to go away. Everything below pop 517 is going to disappear. Last, of course, I can refer to variables in Stata using shorthand. So if I want to mean, if I mean every variable between state2 and pop lt5, I can just do state2 hyphen pop lt5. Stata will know that I mean this variable and every variable in the sequence that they're listed in the variable window until I get down to whatever the second variable I listed was. So now it's going to drop the ones which were not in between those. Okay, that's cleaning, altering, and destroying variables. The very last thing is, of course, before you bring in another data set, if I tried to bring in another data set now, Stata would give me an error message. So if you really want to, you can save this data. I'm going to save this as terrible. Replace any existing file named terrible. And now that my data is saved, now I could bring in a different data set if I wanted.